Beyond the gates, spoilers linger in every creaking floorboard of the Richardson estate, setting the stage for a revelation that will shatter the foundations of the family. It begins on a late autumn afternoon, when the golden sun slants through the dusty windows of Ted Richardson's private study. Kat Dupree Richardson, accustomed to the hushed reverence of this room, is drawn to a drawer she has never dared open until today. Her fingers tremble as she slides it aside, revealing a stack of yellowed correspondence bound by a fraying ribbon. She lifts the topmost envelope, its seal already broken, and the letters inside carry the weight of decades-long deceit. Each word scrawled across fragile parchment paints a portrait of a different mother, one named Alice, whose handwriting is unmistakable in its graceful loops and firm resolve. The shock upends Kat's carefully constructed sense of self. Nicole Dupree Richardson, the loving woman she has always called Mom, may not be her biological mother at all. At first, Kat cannot believe what she holds. She trembles, heart pounding, as she reads Alice's pleas to Ted, her husband, to keep their child safe, to shield her from a scandal that could destroy Alice's reputation. The letters span years, cataloging a secret. Alice gave birth to a baby girl in secrecy, surrendering her for adoption to avoid the merciless judgment of society. That baby girl is Kat. Nicole, as it turns out, adopted her in infancy, unaware of her true origins or of the husband who had engineered the entire arrangement. Ted's handwriting on separate notes reveals his complicity, signing away Alice's maternal rights and staging Kat's adoption as Nicole's own miracle. For decades, Kat has lived under a lie so elaborate that even her own mother's love was woven into a tapestry of falsehood. The psychological reverberations hit like an earthquake. Kat's world warps around her. Every childhood memory now feels tinged with betrayal. She sees Nicole's warm smile not as pure, maternal love, but as a facade maintained by years of secret guilt. The plush upholstery of the living room where she cuddled on Nicole's lap is now a stage set for an elaborate drama. Kat's breath catches in her throat as tears blur her vision. She curls into a corner of the study, clutching the letters to her chest, feeling as though her entire identity has been ripped from beneath her. In that moment of vulnerability, the house seems to mock her, its walls whispering every family secret they have absorbed over time. While Kat grapples with this seismic shift, Martin, the family's longtime confidant and Ted's business partner, observes her from the threshold. His eyes reflect a battle between loyalty and regret. Martin has known this truth for years, bound by a pact of silence with Ted. Together, they nurtured this deception, concealing Alice's maternal claim in exchange for maintaining the Richardson family's veneer of perfection. But as he watches Kat's anguish unfold, Martin feels the burden of his own guilt crease deeper into his conscience. He recalls the night Ted first confided in him, voice low and desperate. "If Alice ever lays claim to our daughter, Nico's life will be ruined, her reputation destroyed." Martin agreed, rationalizing their conspiracy as protecting Kat from scandal. Now, confronted with Kat's unraveling, he wonders whether that protection was worth the cost. Kat's mind spirals through the many faces of her life. Each memory is a shard of glass cutting into her newfound understanding. She remembers Alice's rare visits to the estate, always polite, always distant niceties exchanged across forced smiles. She recalls the gentle touch on her arm, the maternal kindness in Alice's eyes, moments she once dismissed as grandmotherly affection. Now, she realizes Alice's visits were fueled by longing, a mother's aching desire to be close to her lost child. Months of quiet dinners and family gatherings replay in Kat's mind, culminating in that single, telling moment when Alice brushed Kat's hair from her forehead and whispered, "You remind me so much of someone I once knew." Kat thought it congenial curiosity. Now she sees it as the pang of a mother's heart aching in secret. In the days following her discovery, Kat drifts like a ghost through her own life. At dawn she wanders the estate grounds, boots crunching on frost-hardened grass as she searches for clarity. The pond where she once played as a child lies half-frozen now, its still surface mirroring the turmoil in her soul. She speaks aloud to the trees, asking questions that echo back unanswered. How could Ted, her loving father, engage in such deception? Why did Nicole, her devoted mother, never tell her? And what does this mean for her future, her relationships, her very sense of self? Each question deepens the void inside her, widening until it feels like she might fall in forever. As Kat contemplates her next move, she is haunted by visions of Alice. In her dreams, Alice stands at a distance, beckoning, her face both familiar and achingly strange. These nocturnal visitations blur the lines of reality and fantasy, leaving Kat to wonder whether her subconscious is guiding her toward a confrontation or warning her to turn back. She awakens in a cold sweat, clutching the letters as if they might speak to her, offer some guidance. Yet their words, so commanding by daylight, are now inscrutable scribbles in the haze of night. Meanwhile, Martin grapples with his own conscience. He paces the dimly lit corridors of the estate as dusk falls, recalling the evening when he and Ted first plotted the ruse. Ted's eyes were uncharacteristically haunted, his face ashen as he confessed his fear that Alice would ruin everything he had built. Martin had placed a reassuring hand on Ted's shoulder, promising to guard his secret with his life. And for many years, he did exactly that until now. He realizes that loyalty to a lie has only bred more deceit, trifling with humans' most sacred bonds. The hush of the hallway swells like a chorus of ghosts, and Martin senses that the walls themselves might crumble if the truth is not set free. Back in the study, Kat traces the ink lines on Alice's final letter, penned shortly before she left town under duress. It speaks of a promise: I will come for her someday. No court order or legal maneuver can keep me from my child. The words resonate like a premonition. Kat feels the weight of Alice's hope, a hope she once dismissed, but now clings to as a lifeline. She imagines Alice standing outside the estate's wrought iron gates, resolute against the world, her heart pounding as she prepares to reclaim what was taken from her. Without fully understanding why, Kat's chest tightens with anticipation and dread. As Kat wrestles with her emotions, she finds herself drawn to Nicole, the woman she must now see as both her mother and her co-conspirator. One evening, Kat ascends the grand staircase and finds Nicole in the conservatory, tending to a withering orchid. Nicole's back is turned, her shoulders slumped under the weight of years of secrets. Kat's breath catches. There is no malice in Nicole's posture, only regret. Summoning all her courage, Kat steps forward, the letters burning in her coat pocket. Nicole turns, her eyes filled with maternal warmth and an undercurrent of sorrow. For a moment, the two women regard one another in silence, a chasm of betrayal hanging between them. Nicole opens her mouth to speak, but only tears escape, tracing lines of remorse down her cheeks. Kat's voice trembles as she finally confronts her mother. "Why didn't you tell me?" she demands, her words echoing in the humid air of the conservatory. Nicole's hands shake as she reaches out, fingertips brushing Kat's arm. "I tried," she whispers. "Ted wouldn't allow it. He said it would destroy you, destroy us all." Her confession comes in ragged breaths, each one a testament to years of suppressed guilt. Kat's sorrow mingles with anger at Ted for orchestrating the deception, anger at Nicole for letting it persist, anger at herself for trusting them both so implicitly. And yet beneath the fury lies a deeper ache, a longing for the maternal bond she now realizes she never truly had. In that fragile moment of mother-daughter reckoning, Martin appears at the conservatory door, silently bearing witness to the scene. His expression is a mixture of shame and sorrow. Nicole glances toward him, then back at Kat, as if weighing whether to include him in this confessional storm. Kat notices Martin's taut posture, the way his hands clench and unclench at his sides. Though he has been the keeper of the secret, he is also its victim, trapped in a moral quagmire of his own making. As the three stand together, the cool conservatory lights flickering like distant stars, they form an uneasy triad of truth-seekers and truth-bearers, bound by a deceit that has stretched for decades. Winter's first snowfall arrives the next morning, blanketing the estate in pristine white. Kat wakes early and gazes out her window at the silent landscape, the world purified of color and distraction. She knows that soon Alice will emerge from the shadows, demanding justice. But in this stillness she feels the first stirrings of empowerment, a determination to reclaim her own story. She gathers the letters, now neatly tied with the same ribbon she found them in, and places them in a leather satchel. With each deliberate movement, Kat sheds the passivity that has held her captive. The arc of her destiny, long predetermined by Ted's machinations, begins to bend toward her own agency. Yet the path forward remains fraught. Kat must navigate the treacherous terrain of legal battles, family loyalties, and public scandal. She imagines the courtroom where Alice will stand, her tall frame resolute in a sea of reporters and photographers. The judge's gavel will fall, echoing in the hush of the court, as testimony unspools the Richardson family's deepest secrets. And at the heart of it all will be Kat, no longer a passive player, but the catalyst for revelation and reckoning. She closes her eyes, envisioning Alice's facia visage of strength and vulnerability intertwined, and feels a flicker of hope ignite within her. In the final hours of morning, Martin seeks out Kat in the library, where she pores over the letters by the light of an antique lamp. He stands behind her for a moment, uncertain, then speaks in a low voice. "I'm sorry, Kat. I wish I had done things differently." His words carry the weight of genuine remorse. Kat turns to face him, the light casting shadows across her determined features. "This wasn't your fault," she murmurs, though the words feel incomplete. Martin's shoulders slump as he realizes the enormity of his complicity. Together, they share a silent understanding that the truth can no longer be contained. As the first bell chimes in the nearby village church, Kat rises from her chair, steeling herself for what lies ahead. She steps into the corridor, the satchel of letters at her side like a talisman. Every step she takes resonates through the halls of the Richardson estate, echoing against the walls that once held her destiny captive. Beyond these gates, a reckoning awaits, one that will pit mother against father, secret keeper against truth-bearer, and in the end, forge a new chapter in Kat's life, defined not by deception, but by the courage to confront the past and seize her own future. The frozen courtyard gates creaked open as Alice stepped onto the Richardson grounds for the first time in decades. Snowflakes drifted lazily around her, though she barely noticed the chill in the air. Every breath she drew felt thick with anticipation, each step taut with the memory of the daughter she'd borne and lost. She carried no malice and her eyes only steel and longing, but rumors had preceded her arrival. Reporters and onlookers lined the driveway, cameras flashing like 1,000 unblinking eyes. Alice straightened her coat and pressed forward, as if nothing in the world could deter her from this moment. Kat stood on the grand staircase's landing, her leather satchel slung over one shoulder. She watched from behind a tower of Corinthian columns as Alice descended the marble steps. Though she had never seen Alice in person before, she recognized the quiet determination in her gait, the same resolute posture she had glimpsed in the letters. In that instant, Kat felt the fulcrum of her own life shift again, this time toward reunion rather than betrayal. Nicole and Ted flanked her at the bottom of the stairs, their faces masks of practiced composure. Nicole's eyes, red-rimmed from tears and sleepless nights, flicked to Kat and then to the approaching woman. Ted's square jaw was clenched, his gaze unwavering, as if challenging fate itself. Alice paused at the base of the steps and raised a hand in greeting that was at once timid and triumphant. Reporters clamored for an interview, but she ignored them. Instead, she turned her full attention to Kat. The two women regarded one another in silence so profound that the courthouse reporter's shouts became background noise, a distant rumble. Then Kat stepped down the stairs, closing the gap. The first contact, a trembling embrace, was a collision of past and future, as though decades' worth of loss streamed between them in a single heartbeat. Nicole and Ted watched, their secret exposed in that intimate tableau. Nicole's shoulders sagged. The orchid she had been tending earlier lay forgotten on a nearby table. Ted's face, once stoic, seemed to crack. He opened his mouth to speak, to apologize, to plead, but no words came. Martin appeared beside Ted, trembling as much as his conscience had trembled for weeks. He placed a hesitant hand on Ted's shoulder, but Ted shrugged him away. All the silent alliances forged in darkness unraveled in that moment. Alice released Kat and looked at the family gathered before her, the woman who had raised her daughter, the man who had stolen her motherhood, and the accomplice who had watched silently through it all. "I'm not here for recriminations," she began, her voice calm but firm. "I'm here to reclaim what is mine." Nicole gasped, and tears rolled down her cheeks as she realized the gravity of what Alice intended. Journalists leaned forward, pens poised, as Alice quietly continued, "I want custody of my daughter. And I want justice for the years I was kept away." The words landed like a gavel strike. Ted's shoulders twitched. Nicole covered her mouth to stifle a sob. Kat swallowed hard, heart hammering against her ribs. She felt the gravity of her own role, no longer a passive victim, but a participant in this reckoning. She stepped forward, placing a hand on Alice's arm. "I want that too," she whispered, loud enough for family and press to hear. "I want you in my life. I want the truth to stand." Alice's eyes shone with relief, and a faint smile curved her lips for the first time in years. In that moment, mother and daughter formed an unbreakable bond that no court could sever. But the road ahead would still run through a courtroom. Inside the Richardson estate study, now repurposed as a temporary legal war room, Kat sat across from Alice at an oak table littered with documents. Lawyers in crisp suits hovered at the edges, flipping through pages of depositions and adoption records. Martin paced near the window, glancing outside as though expecting Ted to bolt at any moment. The tension in the room was palpable, the hush before battle. Alice leaned forward, tracing the outline of Kat's hand with her finger and murmuring, "I'll fight for every day I lost." Kat's throat tightened. Together, they gathered their resolve. The next morning, headlines splashed across every media outlet. "Mother reclaims daughter after decades, shocking estate scandal rocks Richardson family." Photographs of Alice and Kat holding hands beneath the estate's gates went viral. Social media buzzed with outrage at Ted's deceit, sympathy for Nicole's heartbreak, and admiration for Alice's tenacity. In the Richardson mansion, the air felt brittle, as though one misplaced word might shatter the fragile veneer that remained. Ted summoned Martin to the library, its floor-to-ceiling shelves now echoing with echoes of confessions. The reflection of snow-covered hedges outside glistened against the glass. Martin entered, bracing himself for the inevitable. Ted stood behind his desk, arms folded, gaze distant. "They've gone to the press," Ted said quietly. "My reputation, Nicole's reputation, everything I've built is at stake." Martin swallowed, his own guilt tasting bitter in his mouth. "You knew this would happen eventually," he replied, voice raspy. "Secrets don't stay buried." Ted's jaw clenched. "I did it to protect them," he whispered. "But I never thought Alice would actually come back." He ran a hand through his gray-streaked hair. "What do we do now?" Martin took a deep breath. "We face it. We cooperate. Admit the truth. Apologize. It's our only chance at damage control." Ted's shoulders slumped at the suggestion, but he nodded. The two men shared a moment of fragile solidarity, the only one left after the others had broken free. In court, the Richardson trial drew national attention. A marble-floored courtroom filled with legal tomes and polished benches became the arena for this family's fate. Alice and Kat sat side by side, their hands entwined. Across the aisle, Nicole sat alone, surrounded by a small coterie of defense attorneys, her face pale but resolute. Ted took the stand, his voice trembling as he recounted the original decision to separate mother and daughter. He spoke of fear for Alice's social standing, fear for Kat's future even, as every word shredded the image he had so diligently maintained. Nicole wept silently beside him, her confession emerging in sobs. I loved her as my own, but I should have told her the truth. The judge listened intently, her expression inscrutable. When it was Alice's turn, she spoke eloquently, detailing the agony of watching from the shadows. Her voice caught once, as she recounted the lullabies she had sung to Kat in her dreams, the empty nursery she kept ready in her mind's eye. Kat testified to her words abridged between past and present. I lost my mother twice, she said, voice steady despite the tears glistening in her eyes. Yet today I found her. And I found myself. The courtroom fell silent. Outside, the winter sun glowed weakly against the courthouse facade. Reporters camped out, broadcasting live reactions. Social media debates raged. Should the legal system unravel decades-old adoptions? Could emotional truth override bureaucratic record? But within the courtroom, the question was simple. Had Kat been wrongfully taken? The adoption papers, once a shield for Ted's secret, stood as mute evidence of a cruel transaction made under false pretenses. After days of testimonies, the judge delivered her ruling. Alice would regain full legal custody of Kat. Ted's parental rights were terminated. Nicole's role was commended as loving but tainted by deceit. And she would serve a probationary period of supervised visitation. Martin's name never surfaced on the official record, his involvement deemed as counsel, not a principal actor. He watched from the back row, relief and shame warring on his face. As the gavel struck, Kat released Alice's hand and rose, stepping forward. She turned to look at Nicole, then Ted, then back to Alice. Media cameras clicked furiously, but Kat's voice was clear in the hush. I know you both loved me in your own ways. Nicole fell to her knees, tears streaming as she begged forgiveness. Ted lowered his head, words failing him. Kat lifted her hand and brushed Nicole's hair away, smiling through her tears. I forgive you, she said. Then she faced Alice, wrapping her arms around her mother in a gesture of pure devotion. Alice held her as the courtroom erupted, some in applause, others in stunned silence. The days that followed were quieter. The estate, once a fortress of secrets, now felt hollow and unfamiliar. Alice moved into a modest home nearby, its spare rooms furnished for two. Kat spent mornings unpacking memories and afternoons forging new ones, baking cookies with Alice, revisiting her childhood playground under a new light, laughter replacing the old ache. Nicole visited twice a week, their reunions bittersweet but sincere. She brought fresh orchids and homemade soups, and they would sit together by the fireplace, Nicole confessing her regrets and Kat offering understanding that blossomed into compassion. Martin, too, found a form of redemption. He approached Kat one afternoon in the library, no longer an advisor, but a friend seeking atonement. He presented her with a leather-bound journal, the first page inscribed, "For my daughter, from a keeper of truths." Inside, he had copied every letter Alice ever wrote, ensuring that Kat would never lose connection to her mother's voice. Kat accepted the gift, her eyes moist. "Thank you," she whispered, and in that quiet moment, a long-standing debt between them was finally paid. Ted left the estate soon after the trial, rumored to be traveling abroad to escape the scandal. Word circulated that he would seek treatment for stress, for guilt, for the collapse of everything he had built. Nicole spoke of writing him letters, hopeful that he might one day return when he was ready to face the consequences and rebuild a relationship with his daughter on honest terms. As spring's first blossoms unfurled across the landscape, Kat and Alice planted a garden together on the estate ground, permission granted by the court until the property's future was determined. Together, they dug trenches, planted tulips and daffodils, and scattered wildflower seeds that would bloom long after they were gone. With every handful of soil, they honored roots that had been torn apart and celebrated the new life they were cultivating together. At night, Kat would lie awake in her childhood bedroom, now Alice's domain, and journal about the journey she had taken. She wrote of heartbreak and healing, deceit and discovery, and above all, of love reclaimed. She penned her hopes that Nicole and Ted might find forgiveness for themselves, that Alice's resilience would inspire others, that Martin's loyalty, though misdirected, could become a testament to the power of truth, and that her own story would empower anyone held captive by secrets. Though the road ahead remained uncertain for Ted, for Nicole, for Martin, and even for Alice and Kat themselves, their lives had been irrevocably altered by the courage to face the past. The gates of the Richardson estate, once a barrier between mother and daughter, now stood open, an invitation to truth, to reconciliation, and to new beginnings. And as the sun set on that spring evening, Kat knew that the next chapter of her life would be written not in shadows, but in the bright light of a self defined by honesty and the unbreakable bond between mother and daughter.